In 1959, a car showed up to the Formula One World Championship that looked like it had been built in someone's garage. That is because it had. The Cooper T51 cost less than £1,000, had a 4-cylinder engine where every rival had a 6 or more, and carried that engine bolted behind the driver at a time when every serious team in the world put theirs in the front. The establishment laughed at it. Then it won everything. Number 10. The Cooper Car Company did not start with some grand engineering vision. It started with a motorcycle engine and a problem. Charles Cooper was a racing mechanic between the wars, and his son John wanted to go racing. They could not afford a proper car, so in 1946 they welded 2 front ends of a Fiat chassis together and dropped a 500cc motorcycle engine behind the driver. The engine went in the back for one practical reason. It was chain-driven, and chain drive works best when the engine sits near the rear wheels. Nobody at Cooper was running aerodynamic calculations or theorizing about weight distribution. It was just a father and a son making do with what they had in a small workshop in Surbiton, Surrey. That car raced in hill climbs through 1946, and when the first ever 500cc circuit race in Britain was held at Gransden Lodge Airfield in 1947, Eric Brandon won it in a Cooper. Orders started flooding in. Cooper kept building rear-engined cars after that because it was cheap and it kept winning. Number 9. While Cooper was quietly climbing through the lower racing formulae, Enzo Ferrari watched from Maranello with open contempt. He called Cooper and the other small British teams garagists, garage owners, assemblers. The full Italian phrase was garagiste assembliatore, and it was meant to sting. In Ferrari's world, a real racing team designed and manufactured its own engines, its own gearboxes, its own everything. These little British operations were buying Coventry Climax engines off the shelf, bolting them into lightweight frames they had welded together in a shed, and showing up to race against teams with decades of tradition and factory infrastructure behind them. Ferrari saw it as an insult to proper engineering. What he did not see was that these so-called grease monkeys were about to make his entire approach to car design obsolete. Number 8. The Cooper T51 was not just cheaper than a Ferrari, it was almost absurdly cheap. When the Yeoman Credit Racing Team purchased 3 T51 chassis in October of 1959, they paid £980, 5 shillings and 10 pence each. That is under £1,000 for a rolling Formula One chassis capable of winning the World Championship. Cooper was running a business, not a vanity project. By 1958, 19 Coopers of various types made up more than half the grid at the International Trophy race at Silverstone. They were the largest manufacturer of racing cars in the post-war world, and they achieved that status by building cars that club racers and privateer teams could actually afford to buy and campaign without a factory budget behind them. In total, 38 different drivers would race T51 chassis in Grand Prix events over the car's lifetime. Number 7. Under the rear bodywork sat a 2.5-litre 4-cylinder engine built by Coventry Climax, producing 240 horsepower at 6,750 revolutions per minute. Ferrari's Dyno 246 had a V6 producing closer to 290 horsepower. On paper, the Cooper should have been left behind on every straight. The difference was what the rear engine layout did for the rest of the car. With the engine behind the driver instead of in front, the Cooper had a dramatically smaller frontal area, which meant less aerodynamic drag at speed. It eliminated the need for a long propeller shaft running under the cockpit, saving weight and complexity. The fuel tank sat on either side of the cockpit rather than at the rear, so the car handled consistently whether the tanks were full or nearly empty, a crucial advantage during races that could last up to 3 hours. Gordon Murray, the designer behind some of the greatest racing cars ever built at Brabham and McLaren, later called the Cooper T51 the single most significant change in Grand Prix car design, praising its fundamental rethinking of packaging, weight distribution, and frontal area. What the Cooper lost in raw horsepower on the straights, it clawed back in every braking zone and every change of direction. Number 6. The chassis itself broke almost every rule in the structural engineering textbook. Owen Maddock designed a space frame where nearly every tube was curved rather than straight. Any structural engineer will tell you that curved tubes are weaker than straight ones under load, and at the time, plenty of engineers said exactly that. Maddock did it anyway. The overall geometry of the frame compensated for the individual weakness of each member, and the result was a chassis that was light, reasonably rigid, and fast to manufacture. Revs Institute preserves one of the original T51 chassis and describes the Coopers as having been likened to blacksmiths. The engineers who came after them, people like Colin Chapman at Lotus, took the brilliant idea and refined it. Cooper fired the first shot, and others would finish the revolution. But that crude, curved tube frame won the championship first. Number 5. Finding a gearbox for a rear-engined Formula One car in 1959 was a genuine engineering headache. So few rear-engined production cars existed at that time that there was almost nothing available to purchase off the shelf. Cooper's solution was beautifully crude. They took a gearbox from a Citroen traction Avant road car, turned it around backwards, and bolted it to the Climax engine. The works team used these modified Citroen units fitted with close ratio gears manufactured by a French firm called Prix. These gearboxes took a savage pounding from the 2.5-litre engine, twisting them under load, and after every single race, the entire internals had to be stripped and replaced. Gears, selector forks, dog rings, all of it. Most of the oil would leak out of the breather during the race anyway. Rob Walker's private team tried a different approach, sourcing bespoke gearboxes from Italian specialist Valerio Carlotti. Those turned out to be even more fragile than the Citroen units. The whole gearbox shortage was so severe that it eventually created a market opportunity for a company called Hewland, which went on to dominate racing gearbox supply for decades. But in 1959, nobody had that luxury. Cooper was racing with road car parts held together by hope and a weekend rebuild schedule. The data on this channel shows that over 80% of you watching right now are not subscribed. That means you are showing up for the content, but the algorithm has no reason to show you the next video. If you've made it this far, you clearly care about the cars that change motorsport forever. Hit subscribe so you do not miss the next one. Number 4. Before the T51 even existed, Stirling Moss proved the rear engine concept could beat the very best in the world. At the 1958 Argentine Grand Prix, Moss drove a smaller Cooper T43 with a Climax engine bored out to just under 2 litres, against the full factory Ferrari team running 2.4-litre V6s. He was outgunned on horsepower by a significant margin. Moss ran the entire race without making a single pit stop, nursing a set of tyres so worn that the canvas was showing on both rear wheels by the finish, and won by less than 3 seconds. It was the first victory for a rear-engine car in World Championship history. The warning signs were there for anyone paying attention. Ferrari chose not to pay attention. Number 3. Jack Brabham was not just a fast driver, he was a trained mechanical engineer who had spent years working at the Cooper factory in Surrey. He originally started showing up to scrounge spare parts and gradually became part of the operation. As John Cooper later put it, he did not so much start working for them as working with them. He just began coming in more often and they got used to having him around. His most critical contribution beyond the cockpit was redesigning the T51 gearboxes to make them dramatically more reliable. Brabham corresponded with his Australian engineer friend Ron Tauranak on the modifications, and the improved units went exclusively into the works Cooper cars. Every other team running a T51, and there were more than 10 of them, was stuck with the standard fragile gearboxes that ate themselves after every race. Brabham's son David later explained that it was Jack's engineering ability, more than anything else, that won him the 1959 championship. Number 2. The final race of 1959 was the United States Grand Prix at Sebring, Florida, held on a bumpy former bomber base surrounded by orange groves. Brabham arrived leading the championship with 31 points, Sterling Moss had 25.5, and Ferrari's Tony Brooks sat on 23. All three could still win the title. Moss took pole position and sprinted into a 10-second lead within 5 laps, but his gearbox, one of the standard unreliable Cooper units, failed on lap 5. Brooks was rammed from behind by his own Ferrari teammate Wolfgang von Trips at the first corner, forcing an unnecessary pit stop that ruined his race. Brabham led from there, nursing his car through the Florida heat for over 2 hours. Then, on the final lap, 400 yards from the finish line, the climax engine sputtered and died. Out of fuel, Brabham climbed out of the cockpit, grabbed the car, and pushed. The rules required him to finish without outside assistance, so he shoved the Cooper uphill toward the checkered flag, while Bruce McLaren, Maurice Trintignant, and Tony Brooks all swept past him. He crossed the line in 4th place, collapsed from dehydration and exhaustion, and needed a full 15 minutes lying on the ground before he could even stand. 4th was enough. He was the first Australian world champion, and the Cooper T51 was the first rear-engined car to win both the Drivers' and Constructors' Championships. McLaren, at 22 years old, became the youngest Grand Prix winner in history that day. He later said Brabham had gifted him the win by holding back earlier in the race and letting the young Kiwi match his pace. Number 1. The Cooper T51 did not just win a championship. It killed an entire philosophy of car design practically overnight. In 1959, most of the grid was still front-engined. By 1960, Brabham won 5 consecutive races in the updated Cooper T53, and Colin Chapman's Lotus 18, directly inspired by Cooper's layout, was winning races as well. By 1961, every single car on the Formula One grid had its engine behind the driver. Ferrari, the team that had mocked Cooper as garage owners, was the last to make the switch, building the rear-engined 156 for the 1961 season. After 1960, no front-engine car ever won a World Championship race again. Every Formula One car, every Indy car, every Le Mans prototype built in the decades since follows the layout that Charles and John Cooper stumbled into because they could not afford to put a motorcycle engine in the front of a Fiat chassis. The most important car in racing history was designed by accident, built on a shoestring, and driven to glory by a man who had to push it across the finish line. If you want to see how another tiny team pulled off the impossible and beat the factory giants, subscribe for more. I'll see you in the next one.